So we have the 4-door JK up in the shop for a pretty major repair. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. A few weeks back, we took the JK out to Crossbar Off-Road Park, made the video out of it, doing some high-speed off-roading, doing some kind of like a torture test on this Jeep, and maybe I spoke too soon talking about how bulletproof this setup is on the Jeep, and that's because we actually broke the front Dana 60 axle. So in this video, we have a lot of work to do. Hopefully repair it, 2, take a look at what happened and what caused it, and 3, how to avoid this from happening in the future. So first off, I'll go ahead and show you the crack. We actually cracked the axle tubing right here. We'll have to bring some light in to really show you guys, but this is a fairly known weak spot on this axle and it's held up to a ton of stuff, but we took a very large hit that I wish we got on camera, but we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. First things first, let's dive into this, take a look, see how bad it is, and more importantly, we need to see if this is repairable or if this housing is completely scrap now. I'm fairly certain I know what spot broke the axle here. It was out of Crossbar. We weren't actually filming, we were done for the day. Mike and I went out to the Ultra 4 course where they ran the Ultra 4 courses. And we bombed it in his side-by-side. There were a few really big whoops, down sections. It was bad. I decided to take the JK through it, and there was one spot. We'll go out there and look at it, but we hit it about 40, I hit it about 40 miles an hour, and I had never felt the Jeep suspension bottom out so bad. You can actually see the bump stop. Like, the Delrin is just, it was annihilated from that one big hit, and I think having all of that energy, it just cracked right here. So during the 1-ton swap, whenever you're doing like a DIY junkyard swap, we actually remove like 2 inches of cast on the tube here. And that is a big structural, integral part of it. Since we removed that cast, yes, we did weld it. We did add the truss, and if it wasn't for the Barnes truss, this thing would have snapped completely in half. So definitely always weld your tubes here, but since we take away material, I think the only way to actually fix this is, you know, to pull it back in place, and we're gonna put a lower truss down here. But you could take a look at the crack, and it looks like it only cracked the weld. The tube didn't crack, but we do have a little bit of camber. So what we're gonna do, now that this is cleaned up, we actually have a, this is Mike's contraption here, little porta power that normally is made for pushing, but we flipped the rod and we are going to pull this direction. Now, it was kind of fun getting these straps set up because we only have about ½ an inch of travel with this setup. So we had to preload all of these as tight as it could be. That's what we did yesterday. So Mike's here for the fun. It's time to set the camera up. We're gonna try to jack this in and see if this resettles back into place. I have an angle finder over here on the long tube to make sure we're not bending that side, but I don't know. Ready to give it a shot?
I think it'll work.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, you're getting close to bottoming that out. Easy.
Here?
Huh? Yeah, the gap's still good, but you got like one more. I'm just trying to watch this.
Tension.
Okay, so that's maxed out. It's hard to tell. I mean, like the gap, it didn't close down, but I mean, like you could see like the movement, there was something moving. Those look like it moved back in place. After putting 17 tons of pressure on the axle, while we didn't see any visual movement, like it didn't pop back into place, I can tell it did move a little bit because prior to us doing this, inside this little plug here, you could see a half moon, which meant that the axle tube had shifted. So now there's nothing in there. Now, even though we can see the crack, it just might not want to sit all the way. So we still might have a little bit of camber with the ball, but with the ball joint deletes, we can actually adjust our camber a little bit. If we try to go any more on this, I think stuff's gonna start breaking and we're just gonna start.
Yeah, show the bolt.
Like the bolt. Has already started shaking. We're gonna preheat it about 500 degrees, hit it with the welder, and then post heat it as well. We gotta remember that cast is gonna hold the temperature longer than our normal steel. So we're gonna have to keep our steel up to temp to match the cast. So we have an infrared thermometer. Let's make this weld happen, and hopefully nothing goes pop. Now that we're almost all the way up to the preheating temp, Mike's gonna keep heating that up. I got the welder set up. I'm gonna go in, make a pretty large pass, and he's gonna come right behind me and keep post heating that. And then I'm gonna come back and make the upper weld, and he's just gonna hop right back in. So we should be up to temp. So the entire front half of the axle has been welded. Mike's over there doing the post-heat cycle. And what happens is the steel is gonna cool quicker. So we did a little quick temperature check. The cast was like 450, the steel was dropping down to 380. We're just heating up the steel so it cools down at the same rate so we don't get a premature crack. Some people would say do a few different passes over there, but I think if we start adding too much heat to this area, since it's already cracked, it might just obliterate itself if we put it through too many different heat cycles. So we're doing one pass, and then after we design this truss, it should incorporate it strong enough to where this axle will be fine. There's just no more jumping anymore probably. So let's do a quick temperature check. So on the cast, 480. Over here, 410. With the tube re-welded, it should be strong enough just to drive the Jeep, but we're gonna go a little bit further to make sure this never happens again. And we're gonna do that by reinforcing the bottom structure of the tube here. So currently, you know, the top side, we have the truss preventing it from bending up, but clearly it just wasn't enough. So what we're gonna do is tie in a plate from the cast down here into the tube and over here onto the C. So Mike and I came up with two different brackets here, kind of like a little mini lower truss. This one is gonna get welded flat over here onto the actual, you know, housing. It's gonna tie into the tube right there and over onto the C. Now this lower one, you know, having two might be overkill, but hey, why not? This one's gonna get welded on the back side of the C, has a cutout for the control arm somewhere right around there. And then we're gonna try to box it in at the end. I looked around on the internet to see if anybody was making something like this. You know, it is a little bit unique because it is relevant to the swap truss kits where we cut this cast off, you know, but this is kind of a really good fit. I made some measurements of it. Who knows if anybody is interested in getting some of these. Whether you're planning a 1-ton swap similar to this or you've done one in the past and you're thinking about beefing this up on your axle, let me know. We might start making these, have them for sale. Or if not, I'll let you know where you can find them. So I think it's time to go ahead and test this out, test the fitment. We're gonna have to preheat this section, same as we did when we welded these tubes, but it's safe to say that these aren't gonna crack, at least from the heat difference. It's been about 24 hours completely, and I don't see any cracks in there. Definitely not the most beautiful welds in the world, but she was turned up, welding hot, and she's good to go. Let's get these things burned in and see how they look. So both of the truss plates are welded in. All we have left to do is finish off with this little cap plate. Went ahead and figured out just a nice way that this will sit up in here to tie both of those together. make it a little more structural, like in the boxed setup. So we're also gonna weld it over here to the C along this seam right there, and maybe fill in down over there, but that should be good. We didn't lose a ton of ground clearance. Our control arm is right back there anyways, and this is really gonna box up this whole lower section. So let's get this burnt in and then clean it up, paint it, because we are practically done with it. I'm excited to see once we lower it back down on the ground, if we can visually see any camber with this setup. Finished up the front axle, got everything painted, put back together, and the Jeep is back down on the ground. It's pretty nice to see that our tire visibly does look like we got rid of the camber. I wish I had it before, but you could clearly see the tire tilting in just a little bit. So I think our chain idea, sucking this axle in before making those welds, worked. And going back and editing, I could see that like on one of the shots, the angle finder was at 0.8 degrees and went down to 0.4. So we did move that axle in a little bit, and I think we brought it back into spec. For how strong this is gonna be, we're gonna find out. I think it's better than nothing. You know, who knows what what actually caused this failure? It could have been my welds. It could have been the fact that we removed the cast. It could have been the fact that this just took an extremely hard hit. And hopefully hopefully soon we'll be able to go out there and show you the spot that I'm talking about. But we also found another issue yesterday on the lift from some of those high-speed shenanigans. I actually have a bent wheel back here on the drive or the passenger rear. So these are the Vision wheels. You know, they weren't the highest quality. They're a budget bead lock, and they've done a great job. But unfortunately, you know, with it bent, we're gonna have to throw the spare on. But another problem, the spare actually has the old Yokohamas on it, and we swapped over a while ago to the Arturo green label stickies. So we gotta do a quick bead lock swap. Luckily, Anderson Automotive here in town let me swing by. That was all the bolts for the bead lock. Oh man, well that's gonna be a fun treasure hunt. Anderson Automotive let me swing by and break the inner bead so I don't have to challenge that here at home. But we got a lot of work to do. Let's get this bead lock assembled, pull off that old wheel, and see how bad it actually is bent. So I just finished up mounting the 5th Arturo green label tire on the bead lock, and I want to go ahead and show you how bad this old wheel is bent. It hopefully the GoPro can pick it up, but that is quite a bend, and it goes pretty far deep. It's that first ridge line there. So that's not something necessarily that I think I'll be able to pound out, especially since it's aluminum. Hopefully take this to a wheel shop, you know, unmount it and everything, and see if it's something they can save, because yeah, that's a pretty big bend there. It'll be fine as a spare for now because it's still holding air, but you know, I wouldn't trust that too much on a trail. So we got that set up, and it kind of leads me into this whole thing. Like, we had some major failures here. We had the front Dana 60 broke, the wheel bent. You know, what would I recommend to you guys to kind of prevent this stuff? First thing is, don't go so fast off-road unless you're building or have built a Jeep to handle that. And that's where the 2-door build is gonna come into play. So we actually have a set of crate axles on order for it. They'll be here in about 6 weeks. So we will do a comparison video between junkyard axles versus crate axles. You know, I'm still a big junkyard fan. I think with this fix that we've rigged up here, I think it's gonna be more than strong. I don't think we'll see another failure with it, but you know, then again, it's a much budget friendlier option. So we do have some videos coming up between the two, crate axle versus Super Duty DIY junkyard axle, and kind of an overview on how I like mine. You know, it's been about 4 years since we've done the swap, so it's time for a full review on them, and then talk about why we're doing crate axles on the new 2-door build. Now for the wheels, you know, these Visions were a little more budget friendly. As for the 2-door build, we have a nice stack of Raceline wheels here. So clearly the decision was already made to go with Raceline, and this is kind of, you know, topping on the cake. So A lot in store for the two-door, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. Hopefully you've seen the beautiful Crate LS3 over there. That's the big hot cam package from GM, 525 horsepower. So there's a lot in store for this two-door build. You know, it's gonna go pretty fast. It's gonna handle some big rocks. We'll announce it in another video. But back to what we were talking about. For those of you who are building or have built a Super Duty front housing, I would suggest trussing the lower portion like I did. Who knows, maybe we'll have some for sale, or maybe, you know, somebody soon will start making them. So it's a good option, especially if you're gonna start getting outside a little more of that rock crawling. Like this axle setup can handle crawling all day, but as soon as you start bouncing it, especially with the heavy Jeep, it starts to become a weak point. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next week. Probably have the two-door in here for some action. We'll see you later.